All right. Man, we've had a full day, huh, Dwayne? Absolutely. We're going to be talking about investing. Is that it? All right. And what we do with our investing is what we try to do in myEcon is we want to make everything to give you a step-by-step process, as Mr. Thomas was talking about, because the financial industry is just as that paper says, it's endless. Literally, you could spend your whole life studying investing and finance, and if you did that for 50 years, you'd still be learning. Just to give you an idea of that, the broadness of that statement, Warren Buffett is, of course, the second wealthiest man on earth. And he made all that money from investing over the last 55 years. His dad was a senator, and he left the family $100,000, and Warren, through investing, turned that into, of course, over $50 billion. But what you learn in that is that great investors minimize what they invest in. In other words, great investors don't try to be an expert in every arena. You minimize so you can maximize. You become an expert in a certain arena. Like Warren Buffett is what they call a value investor. He invests like some people shop, if they're good at shopping, okay? In other words, they look for a sale. Perfect example of that is one of the big lumber companies a few weeks ago had a bad article run on them on 60 Minutes, because they were supposedly doing some stuff that wasn't good in the lumber business where they were having their products made. So, of course, the stock went down, right? Well, it's a big company, been around for a long time, so a good investor would think, okay, well, eventually they're going to get that straight, right? So if you buy that stock now while it's down, you're buying at a discount. That's called a value investor. Just like, if you're a good shopper, you go to the mall, then you know that, summer's coming, so somebody's still got some winter stuff left over, right? So if you got some extra cash, you buy it, put it up until wintertime comes back. Is that correct? That's value investing. That's really, investing is that simple. You got some investors that are technical investors. They buy based on technical signs. Like if a company's earnings or their profits are growing at a certain speed and they got X amount of cash in the bank, then, of course, they're going to use that information to make a decision. And so it's really endless. Okay. So what we do in myEcon is we want to put your investing strategies within a box so that we can get you to financially successful, which will be, which your retirement account and your emergency account will get you there. And then when you get out in step 8, you're on your own. Okay? You with the big boys and big girls then, okay? But even then, but by the time you get there, you should have been doing this for 5 or 10 years. You should have, $1 million in your investment account, or at least $500,000 to $1 million in your investment account. You should have 6 months living expenses in the bank. You should have no debt. So now, and you should have been studying investments for a while, so now when you get into that arena, you know what you're doing. And if you want to, you can go talk to a good financial advisor. He talks to multiple advisors. He's not making decisions in a vacuum. That's how expensive finance and money is, okay? It's endless, literally. And every time a person thinks they have mastered it, then somebody will create something new. Okay? It's kind of like music, right? About time you think you've heard the song, and it just can't get any better. Somebody else come along and they said, that really did it. Is that the way it is? Money is the same way. But we can get where we're going with minimal study, minimal effort, and you can become wealthy, and that's the good part, isn't it? All right. Now, so that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today, and then I'm going to get to the questions of the 401k, the 403b, the IRA, and all those things. But what I want to do first is I want to show you how the investment world works so we can minimize it. We want to minimize it and put it in a box. See, if we can put it in a box, you know, kind of like when you go to McDonald's. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with a hamburger, right? But if you go down to McDonald's, you got a 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. They're going to put it in a box, right? They don't want to hear all that about endless, because if you go down to McDonald's, you start customizing, they're going to say, ma'am or sir, if you drive over to the side, in a couple of hours, we'll be out there. And then the next time you go down there, you know to go number 1, 2, 3, 4, and you do whatever you need to do to it yourself. So don't be messing up our system. Everybody got it? All right. So when you look at the financial world is divided into 4 quadrants. I didn't create that. That's the way it is. Okay. You can go down to a good bookstore, and you can find books on the 4 quadrants of finance. Okay. Not the ones that Kiyosaki's talking about. He's not talking about. He's talking about the worker. I'm actually talking about the investments. There's 4 types of investments. Okay. Now, every investment that you could make on earth fits inside these 4. Okay. If you buy a product from an insurance company, if you buy a product from a bank, through a financial advisor, any type of investment you make is going to fit these 4 quadrants, okay? Now, the first quadrant, let me go back here, is called cash equivalence, okay? And where this is going to lead us, it's going to lead you to the point that you can understand your 401k or your 403b or your IRA. Once you get the basic understanding, you're going to have it all, okay? But we got to go through the building blocks for about 35 to 40 minutes before we get there, okay? All right, so we got cash equivalent. Cash equivalence is where most people put their money because it's the most obvious. That's who people are marketed. They market that product, okay? Now, a cash equivalent is where when you invest money, the principal is guaranteed by the institution that you put the money in, okay? That's number 1. You'll know a cash equivalent. It's guaranteed. The principal is guaranteed by the institution. Number 2, the money is accessible to you from immediate to within 24 to 48 hours. Okay? Like a bank. Okay? You can get to your money quick, can't you? And your principal is guaranteed by the bank. Am I correct? Okay. Now, so under cash equivalents, you have savings accounts. Everybody know what a savings account is? You go down to the bank, you can get one, right? Put some money in, passbook savings account, they pay you a very low interest. Then you got CDs. A CD is nothing but a savings account with time limits. If you put money in a regular savings account, you can get it out immediately, go down and take it out, right? They'll give an interest rate. But if you tell the bank, you said, well, I want a CD, they said, okay, we're going to give you a savings account, but you're telling us you're going to leave your money in for a period of time. 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. And since you're going to leave it with them longer, they'll pay you a what kind of interest rate? Higher. Because they have access to the money longer, right? Why is that? Because they're going to use your money to make what? Money. Okay, so if you tell me you're going to let me have your money for a year, I'll give you one rate. You say I give it to you for 5, I'll give you a higher rate. You take it out early, you reneged on the deal, I'm going to hit you with a penalty. That's pretty simple. Everybody got it? You understand what's happening? See, once you understand the flow, it's simple from there. Then you got a bank money market. A bank money market is nothing but a savings account with a checking account attached to it. Going to pay you some interest on the savings, but you got checking. Now, they created that product so that people would feel good about a savings account. That's the reason why. Because it got checking attached to it. So it's a money market. So now you don't have to say I got a savings, I got a checking, I got a money market. Sounds sophisticated, doesn't it? All right. Then you have what's called EE savings bonds. See, here's the reality about money. In a capitalistic society, you need money to make money. And every financial institution is set up to get somebody else's money or capitalize on somebody else's money to make some more money. In other words, they didn't build the bank because they wanted you to have a place to keep your money safely. They built the bank so they could get your money to be able to use it to go make some what with it? More money. It's capitalism, okay? That's the whole idea of money, all right? Now, well, the government, so that's the private sector. The savings account, the CD, the bank money market. That's how the private sector, the banking industry gets your money. But then the government said we want it too. So back during World War I, they created what's called the war bond. Now they call them the EE savings bond. You loan the government your money, and they pay you an interest rate. The interest rate is tied to the Treasury rate, which is basically the rate that that you can borrow, that the government borrows money for. And they'll pay you interest on your money every 6 months. Now, you can find that rate on Google. Now, somebody's going to say, and you've heard this before, if you get a savings bond, it doubles every 6 months or every 7 years. You ever heard that? It's not even close to the truth. The rate goes up and down, and right now it's less than 1%. Okay, we'll go there and find it in a minute. I'll have Sam pull it up. You go to Google, and you just put in EE savings rates. It changes every May and every November, and it's less than 1% right now, okay? Then, so that's how the government gets in on the deal, because, see, everybody's looking to get cheap money. See, it's just like if you're in the restaurant business. You've got, and you're selling hamburgers. You got to buy beef wholesale so you can buy it cheap because you want to turn around and sell it retail higher and make money, right? It's the same process with money. If somebody can get your money at 2%, they can turn around and invest it and get 8%, they got 6 in the middle. It's no different than the restaurant business. Everybody understand? All right, so now the brokerage business, that's the investment business, like Merrill Lynch, E.F. Hutton, J.P. Morgan. These are investment companies. Here's the difference. Banks are chartered by states, and they operate under a different set of rules than investment companies. In other words, a bank, they have to keep X amount of reserves of money. For every dollar they loan out, they got to keep X amount of dollars inside the bank in cash to be able to qualify for the state regulators. Okay? So what they want to do there is they want to minimize the risk for their customers by state law. Every state's a little bit different. Okay? But in investment business, that's regulated by the federal government. In that business, you're what's called a qualified investor, and you're on your own. So they also created a product to be able to get people's money to use, and they call it a brokerage CD. The only difference is a bank CD is guaranteed by FDIC. A brokerage CD is guaranteed by FISP, which comes from the brokerage business and not the banking industry. See, all these things are different institutions. Okay? Then you got Treasury bills. The government's got a Treasury bill. Okay. When the government borrows money, they borrow money every week. Okay? They issue bills, notes, or bonds. The length of the loan determines the name. Okay? If the length of the loan, in other words, if I'm loaning the government my money less than 2 years, it's called a bill. Okay, it's called a Treasury bill. Now, since it's going to be a short-term loan, the interest rate is going to be what? Lower. Okay? If the loan is between 2 years and 10 years, it's going to be a note. If the loan is 10 years or more, it's a bond. Everybody got it? So you got bills, notes, and bonds. So When you look at USA Today on the front page, it'll tell you about the government T-bills, notes, or bonds. Well, the one that banks buy a lot of is U.S. Treasury Bills. Okay? That's where the government is borrowing the money. They're putting in bills. Now, a Treasury bill, they're typically issued in increments of $10,000, and the government will buy those every Monday morning. See, here's what you got to understand about terminology, okay? All this stuff comes from old Europe. And you got to understand the world 100, 200, 300 years ago before they had internet and before people had access. You could trick people real easy. Surprisingly, you can still do it. They still got the internet. Okay, so here's what would happen. If you went in to borrow money, and see, back in those days, they had the landowners and they had the workers. Or they call them landowners and they call them servants. Am I correct? And if you didn't have any land, you didn't have any assets, you had to work on somebody else's place. Okay? So so that the whole system is based on that same thought process of landowners or owners, like we talk about here, capitalists, controlling everything, but tricking everybody else into work for them. All right, so here's the deal. When a wealthy person or an institution want to borrow money, they say, we're going to float a bond. You ever heard that terminology? We're going to float a bond. Or I will buy, you see what I'm saying? Or they will sell you a bond. When a middle-class working person or a poor person needs to borrow some money, they have to fill out a loan application. Okay, let me show you how you can, okay? If they build a school in Arkansas, or they build a bridge, or a library, anything like that, the government, the municipality that's doing that, they have to borrow the money, don't they? So they said, we're going to have a bond issue. We're going to float a bond. Anybody ever heard that terminology? That means the city, the county, the state, whoever's doing it, they need to borrow some money, right? So the way they do that is they issue what's called bonds. Look like a dollar bill, but a little bigger than a dollar bill, a little thicker paper than a dollar bill. Always issued in increments of $1,000. Very turnkey. So they issued a bond, and on the bond it would have three things. The face value is $1,000. The interest rate, that's the rate they're going to pay you. And the maturity date, that's the date that they're going to give you your original investment back. So they're going to give you interest all the way through. On the maturity date, they're going to give you the money back. Okay? So what happens is let's just say the state issues a bond for $1,000. The interest rate is 6%, and they're going to borrow the money for 30 years.